Civil society groups and labor unions are calling for justice for the people of Jagersfontein almost 2 years since the tailings dam collapsed. The mining waste disaster took place in the early hours of the 11th of September back in 2022 when the tailings dam at the Jagersfontein diamond mine collapsed. Now, the thick grey slug injured dozens and also killed several people. I'm joined now by Hassen Lorgat from the Benchmarks Foundation. A pleasure to have you on the program, Mr. Lorgat. So what prompted this recent call for this release of the Jagersfontein disaster report, but also the prosecution of those responsible?
Yeah, thank you very much. I am working with the tailings working group. So my history was with the Benchmarks Foundation. Earthworks and Benchmarks convened a workshop attended by unions and other civil society groups, community groups, etc., around at the end of June. And basically what the groups really demanded there was action, because it will be the second anniversary. And you know that there's no report, despite reports being promised that, in November, you had the Department of Water and Sanitation saying, November 22, that they've criminally charged the company.
Right.
To date, none of us have seen this report, but we heard in consultations with them that there was a call that they made to the National Prosecuting Authority to charge the company. Our principle is simple. What we want is the polluter must pay. Those who cause damage to animal life, to human life, properties, livelihoods, have to be accountable. And why is this important? It is important because if an accident like this happens, we need to know what are the causes of it. Was it a design fault? Was it a monitoring fault? And then we need to take appropriate measures. And as I've said in various media pronouncements, this is not a radical thing. It is standard government practice. 2 years down the line, it is scandalous that nothing has been done.
You're quite right. The Jagersfontein disaster occurred nearly 2 years ago. What have been the major challenges in really obtaining forensic reports and even holding those responsible parties accountable in this matter?
Well, it is for them to answer. Really, in fact, our aim is to point out to them. In Brazil, 2019, January, 272 people died. Massive damage from a tailings disaster. And all the bosses ran around saying, yes, we need to get global standards. Us in civil society talk about safety first standards. So we all went about talking so proudly about how we're going to act on this. Let me explain to you. Tailings are mine dumps. They could be slurry, could be sludge, could be different forms of waste from the diamonds and the gold and all those things that we have. And quite clearly what we end up looking at is all the beautiful shiny minerals. We don't look at the waste. Most of this waste is located around poor black communities historically. And there are 6,100 ownerless and derelict mines. And the government just has to step out on this particular one to show us that they are interested in taking care of their citizens by making sure that those who pollute and profit against the best interests of our desires must pay for it. And here we're finding governments being lacking. The example I gave you about Brazil is instructive in that within 6 months, right, there was a report. Directors got million dollars worth of fines. Various people, they were designated fines against certain people. Here we are waiting. What is it? Is it crony connections, capitalism that is unproductive for us? No. It cannot work at the expense of our people.
I want to latch on to the example that you make. You mentioned the Brumadinho disaster in Brazil as a comparison. What other lessons can South Africa then learn from the way that this disaster was handled? And how does it highlight differences in global responses to such events?
I mean, as I said to you, there's nothing revolutionary, right, about doing a... Government is, in fact, part of our problem with tailings is that too many people are administering tailings, right? Water Affairs has got a stake in it, right, in terms of the building. We've got stakes of it in environmental affairs. We've got stake of it in the remining, in Department of Mineral Resources. We've got, so we've got various stakes of these in different departments. But the citizens, what they want a particular accountability from the government, which is the carer of last resort. You know, so the point is, we need to ask the minister, when it happened, there are incredible photographs where you see the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, jumping over some wastewater there. Gwede was there. Everyone was there. Minister Mantashe said, no, this is not our problem. This is actually water affairs problem. But let me tell you this. When the disaster, before the disaster took place, at least 2 years before, right, they were warned. The mayor tweeted at least a year or so, or 6 months before, that this tailings, their facility, is causing a problem. Workers, organized workers from the NUM, laid warning complaints to say, hey, this thing is unstable. And we ignored that. All that must come out in a report so that the society can be enriched, so we can learn the lessons of our mistakes and not to repeat it. But the warning I was trying to tell you, when these dams collapse, when they burst because of the extremities of heat and cold, what's going to happen? That sludge, the slurry, all goes down and damages people's lives and livelihoods without discrimination. They don't say, you work for this radio station, this TV station, or you're a researcher. No, it kills us all, right? And this is the problem that we have. This is a bigger threat around the vagaries of our environment. Those in KZN, those in Cape Town, where the tornadoes and the floods are happening, climate change is real. And we are trying to say that the dams will burst, but the dams with waste will burst and kill people. Far more easier. If they survive, they will be stuck with illnesses that they didn't invite.
As we continue to draw parallels or comparisons, how does the international response to disasters or mining disasters differ between some of the countries that you've noted? And what can be done to improve global standards and practices as well?
Well, as I said, the Minerals Council, which is the former Chamber of Mines, they subscribe to the Global Industry Tailings Standard, right? So there's a voluntary set of principles that its members must adhere to. As we say that we from civil society, we find that a bit soft, so we've pushed for guidelines on safety first, where communities must be integrally involved. But you know, you can't just be involved. As I've pointed out in this very, very example, people gave warnings to the authorities and they ignored it. So there must be public hearings. This is what we want, public hearings. This is what happens. In Brazil, they had a judicial inquiry, and it was done within 6 months. Imagine 272 people died. 2 of the women who died were pregnant, so that's why the community wants us to add more. But here we lost probably 3 to 4 people, of course, obtained numbers of domestic animals, etc., etc. But we don't know the story. And I blame the media, and I'm also part of the media. So I blame the media. I blame the Human Rights Commission. I blame all of us who were going all crazy. Oh, there was a disaster. There was a disaster. I mean, I don't understand what pleasure we got from it. Our job is to make sure we tell those people, okay, there was a disaster. Where's the report? Who's held accountable? And then we must take self-criticism there to show that we could have been more vigilant in keeping the authorities accountable. Now with the government of national unity, let's see. But the DA, the ANC, all of them were there, passing comments. Yes, this is wrong. Where is it? We want to know who was wrong and how do we fix it?
We want to know who was wrong and how to fix it. But what specific actions are being demanded, for example, from the NPA and other regulatory bodies in response to...
prosecute,
right?
To prosecute, to produce a report in an open public platform where we can interrogate it, and then we see what lessons are learned. The recommendations must be there. But let me tell you, the Free State Director General, Kopung Ralikotsane, right? He said that the diamond mine was given warnings beforehand, but it was ignored. That is 2 years before the disaster. And I quote him here, he says in the paper, as the province, we find ourselves in a difficult situation as the mine owners were warned to stabilize their wall or cease operation through warning certificates. Now, 2 years before, it's like saying to someone, I'm coming to rob your bank, and I'm coming with these arms, and you do nothing about it. This is a dereliction of duty.
So the disaster, very interestingly, involves several companies, including Star Gems Group and previously Renit Investments. How important is corporate accountability in such cases? and what mechanisms can ensure that these companies take responsibility also for their environmental and social impact?
You're right. This was a De Beers prime mine. I mean, it produced jewels and diamonds that the world was praising, right? And they sold it off. And then, of course, you heard the court case which Gwede Mantashe speaks about, which meant that the DMRE at that time didn't have responsibility. But ultimately, government is the owner there. I think collectively, they must be held responsible because the company, Rennet Investments at Luxembourg, became involved in 2011. But passing off this responsibility, then they sold it to Star Gems Group in 2022. I mean, what is it? What is it? Are people expendable? I think all of them needs to be there. Johan Rupert, they all, because he owned Reinhart's investment, they all must be there to answer. What did they sell? Do they sell over footstoots, as they would say they're doing? Is that fair on the communities? Is this a black economic empowerment? You sell it cheaply so that they can take the political burden? I don't think it's fair. They all have to be in the dock.
You've also highlighted the role of climate change in really exacerbating the risks that are associated with the tailings dam. How should mining companies and regulatory bodies then adapt their own practices to indeed address the challenges posed by extreme weather conditions and climate change as well?
You know, everyone signs onto a charters and they don't factor this into their bottom line. You know, so global unions like Industrial working with us, the NUM in the country, London Mining Network, Mining Watch Canada, Earthworks, all these groups are insistent that these tailings be mapped. Where are they? How close are they from communities? And what are the potential danger that they will face as we go forward?
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Lorgat, and also sharing your insightful and candid discussions on the Jagersfontein disaster and also seeking the broader issues surrounding waste management.